The average Nigerian worker needs 20 to 40 years of their income just to buy a house. That's almost like working your entire adult life without spending a kobo of your salary and still not having enough for a modest home. This simple depiction captures the reality of Nigeria's housing market and why real estate has become one of the country's most important, yet most unequal economic sectors. Housing is one of the three basic needs, along with food and clothing. It reflects a person's living standards and a country's overall economic health. Nigeria's property industry is massive. Estimates place the real estate sector at roughly 41.3 trillion naira. It contributes about 13.3% to Nigeria's gross domestic product, making it one of the largest industries in the country. The Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, which offers mortgages through the National Housing Trust Fund, struggles with limited funds and capacity. So, most low-income people buy land and build slowly with their own money, while wealthier buyers use cash or mortgages repaid over a few years. Yet, despite the size of this industry, Nigeria faces one of the largest housing shortages in the world. It is estimated that Nigeria's housing deficit for 2025 stood at about 15 million housing units. To picture the scale, imagine the entire population of Kano State all needing houses that simply do not exist. And this gap continues to widen because demand far exceeds supply. Experts estimate that Nigeria needs 700,000 to 1 million new homes every year just to keep up with population growth and urban migration. In reality, only about 100,000 houses are built annually. So for every 10 homes Nigerians need, only one is actually built, while the rest of the demand carries over into the next year. This growing shortage is especially visible in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. The city's population has been expanding rapidly as people move in from across the country for government jobs, business opportunities, and better infrastructure. Some estimates suggest Abuja's population is growing by roughly 8% each year, and the capital alone accounts for about 10% of Nigeria's housing shortage. Yet Abuja also reveals a striking contradiction. Across high-end districts such as Maitama and Asokoro, luxury estates and gated communities continue to rise, and some reports indicate that hundreds of high-value homes remain empty, often purchased as investments rather than places to live. It is a bit like a restaurant where people are waiting outside for food, but dozens of tables remain permanently reserved and unused. Property prices across the capital reflect this divide. In high-end neighborhoods like Maitama and Asokoro, duplexes can sell for up to 500 million naira. In middle-income districts such as Gwarimpa or Lokogoma, for up to 150 million naira. In satellite towns like Lukbe or Kubwa, smaller homes may range from 50 million to 60 million naira. Government housing programs attempt to provide cheaper alternatives, with units priced roughly between 8.5 million and 12.5 million naira, but even these prices remain out of reach for many Nigerians. Because buying a home is so difficult, most urban residents rely on renting instead. But even rents have also surged sharply in recent years.
When you're buying a property for 360 million naira, how much do you expect to rent it out? If you expect that your return on investment for rental value is average at 15 years to recoup your investment, if you do 350 divided by 15, that's what you basically should be renting. Oh, and my analysis may also differ from another person's. But that's why you see terraces now in Jahi, for example, in Maitama, in Garki, going for 15 million to 25 million naira. And then you see 3-bedroom flats renting for 5 million to 10 million naira because of the construction cost, because of the cost of production. So when the cost of production goes up, when the cost of purchasing these units remains high, the cost of rent will also remain high.
Reports suggest rents in many Nigerian cities have increased by more than 200% in recent years. Globally, housing experts recommend that people spend no more than 30% of their income on rent. But in Nigeria, many households spend 40% to 60% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. But why are we seeing this surge in real estate prices? One argument is that building houses in Nigeria is expensive.
If you're buying a plot of land for 600 million naira, and that is 1,000 square meters, you could put 4 terraces or townhouses, semantics. You could put 4 terraces. It's going to cost you at least 150 million naira to build and fully finish a 4-bedroom terrace with BQ. 150 million construction cost. This is the cost of the carcass, cost of finishing, cost of providing infrastructure, because a lot of the places we have in Abuja, we still do part of our infrastructure. What I mean by infrastructure is electricity, like I mentioned in the earlier response, roads, water, sewer, or sockaway, as the case may be. Some of these things are not completed in a lot of the districts in the FCT. Say for fully serviced districts like Maitama, Guzape, Jahi, and the rest, and Asokoro and the rest. So by the time you calculate this construction, I'd say 150 million naira to build and finish one unit. And then your cost of land is 600 million naira. Divide that by 4, you have another 150 million naira. How much is the production cost for a 4-bedroom with BQ terrace in Jahi?
Tell me.
That's 300 million.
Mm.
So by the time that your calculation is 300 million, as a businessman, I'm sure you've sold something in the past or you still sell something. What is the margin you expect to put on your production cost? Let's say you are a generous business person and you say, let me just do 20%. What's 20% of your 300 million? That's 60 million. So if I'm just doing this project to make 20%, if I put the 20% on the cost of production, a terrace in Jahi will now cost you about 360 million.
Much of the country's construction industry relies on imported materials, including steel, fittings, and specialized building components. When the value of the naira falls, the price of these materials rises.
So what I'm saying is, government policies and sometimes not just the government, but economic activities internationally affect the market in Nigeria. For example, now the war in the Middle East is affecting the cost of transportation because of fuel. Fuel has just shot up now to about 1,400. I bought fuel for 1,400 yesterday in Jos. This will automatically translate in a review on the cost of transport. So iron, cement, gravel, everybody will basically have to review his cost to take care of this cost of production before the final product. So when cost of construction is not stable, it keeps fluctuating and it keeps going up, and the cost of land keeps going up without any regulation, then the final product is the consumer that will gain of the final product.
As a result, constructing a basic 3-bedroom terrace can cost up to 100 million naira. In simple terms, when the price of cement, steel, and imported fittings rises, the cost of an entire house rises with it. Another major factor driving high housing prices is that Nigeria's housing sector largely operates as an open market with limited effective regulation or subsidy. Developers buy land, cement, steel, and labor at market prices and typically receive little state support.
Laws regarding rent, even though enforcement is difficult, but there is nothing like that across the country in a documented manner, or, for example, in FCT. So I can build my house and start to rent it for 25 million naira, and if it's an open market, you can either rent it or go. You can't report me to the government and say I'm extorting people. It's my personal property, and because there are no checks, there are no laws regulating rent. That's why landlords can wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, cement is high now." Something that he has built 10 years ago, and say the rent of my property now is 10 million that I've reduced it.
Unlike many countries where governments subsidize affordable housing or regulate prices, most Nigerian housing is financed privately and sold at whatever price the market can bear. High interest rates, weak mortgage systems, and limited access to long-term financing further raise costs, which developers pass on to buyers. Now, on the other end of the value chain, what about the construction workers who physically build these homes? How are their wages, conditions, and protections shaped by the industry?
We are real estate developers, and we go by one of two models. You either do direct labor, meaning your company is the one employing labor directly, or you contract the work out to a contractor who is a construction expert who then has the team already in the background. We have deployed both models, but the one that we deploy that is the most common for our company, for example, is we contract our jobs out to construction companies who then within their own company have all of these people in their salaries. So of course, we expect that they have contracts with the company that they honor. If you're doing direct labor, if you're dealing with workers directly, there is an industry rate. There's an industry, just like the cost of materials shifts from time to time, there's an industry rate that goes per item, per element, per labor, and also per skill. So for example, you could say you pay a laborer 120 naira for each brick he lays. A bricklayer, you pay him, for example, between 100 and 150 naira per brick. This is industry practice. If that shifts, just like inflation affects other elements of the business, other cost of labor, it also affects this. Some of these workers have informal, some have formal setups where they have, for example, Sarkin Guinea or Sarkin, for example, in Gombe, you have Sarkin Guinea, who is basically like the head of the organization of bricklayers, or the head of organization of laborers, or a particular team or a particular skill, Sarkin Kapintoti, for example, here, or someone. So these people are also able to protect the interests of their workers and argue for a standardized rate that is competitive across the industry. When you're dealing with more formal organizations, there are insurances in place. For example, there's a requirement that your business has to be registered with the National Social Insurance Trust Fund, NSITF. And there are other private insurance arrangements that you make with your contractors for the duration of the project, just to ensure and make sure that workers are given their rights, and if there is any incident at site, that they're taken care of. But this is the informal setting. And then for more structured organizations, the formal settings fall under their contracts and their insurance policies.
Economists also highlight another major issue known as dead capital. Studies from PwC estimate that Nigeria has at least $300 billion and as much as $900 billion worth of land and property assets that remain economically underutilized. This includes abandoned buildings, underdeveloped land, and properties without proper documentation that cannot easily be sold, financed, or used as collateral. It is like having hundreds of billions of dollars sitting in a bank account that nobody can access. Together, these numbers reveal a paradox. Nigeria has a 41 trillion naira real estate industry, yet millions of people still struggle to find affordable housing. The skyline of cranes and estates rising across Abuja represent both enormous economic potential and deep structural inequality.